Chapter 4. Somewhere adventures live. The next morning, Tilly was sitting at the kitchen table reading her mom's copy of Anne of Green Gables when Granddad popped his head round the bookshop door. He came and gave Grandma a kiss on the cheek as she simmered gooseberries on the stove, singing under her breath along with the radio. I wonder what gooseberries are. I'll have to look that up. "Oscar's here," he said to Tilly, smiling. "He said you'd promised to help him find a book." "Oh, I didn't think he'd come," Tilly said, putting a bookmark carefully in her mom's book and placing it well out of reach of the sticky gooseberries. She headed into the shop and saw Oscar wandering between the bookshelves, trailing his fingertips along the spines of the books. Tilly watched him soak up the atmosphere of the shop for a moment. Have you never been here before?" she asked, making Oscar jump a little. "I didn't hear you come in," he said sheepishly. "And yes, of course I've been in before. It's where Mum gets all her Christmas presents, but I'd forgotten how—" He paused. "Magical?" Tilly suggested. "Exciting? Beautiful?" "Yes, but that's not what I mean. It's not what it looks like. It's how it makes you feel, isn't it? Isn't there a word that means somewhere adventures live?" "I don't think so, but there should be," Tilly said. "But anyway," Oscar said, collecting himself, "it's cool, is what I mean. But I haven't been in for ages. I'm not up to this way that much. We have someone else who looks after the cafe on weekends, and I usually spend the school holidays with my dad." "Where does your dad live?" "In Paris, with my big sister Emily." "Oh, wow, I thought you were going to say South London or something," Tilly said. "It must be amazing to get to spend the holidays there. I've never even been outside of England." "Yeah, I guess," Oscar said. "Paris is pretty cool, but Dad got remarried last summer, and Marguerite's really nice. But now it kind of feels like I'm visiting someone else's home when I'm there. And Emily is always out with her friends, so I decided not to go this holiday." "How come Emily lives with your dad?" Tilly asked. "She decided to go to college there," Oscar explained. "She wants to be fluent in French, so she can get into university there, too. Her boyfriend lives in Paris." "Do you miss them?" Tilly asked. "Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I miss my sister more than my dad, I think. Sometimes it feels like I'm in the way when I'm there. Not that I'm not wanted, but that it would be easier if I weren't there." Oscar paused. "Do you miss your parents?" he asked quietly, as though he wasn't sure if he was allowed to talk about them. "Mostly it's almost fine," said Tilly, surprising herself at how comfortable she felt talking to Oscar honestly. "But every so often I can feel the gap where they should be. It's not like that all the time, but I'm always aware of it a little bit." "What happened to them?" Oscar asked, still looking at his feet. "My dad got ill and died. I don't know many of the details. He had to go abroad for work. He got ill. He died before he could get home. We don't really know what happened to my mom. She left really soon after I was born without telling Grandma and Granddad or anyone where she was going. And she never came back. We haven't heard from her since." "Whoa, that's like something from a TV show," Oscar said before stopping. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It must be horrible. Do you really not know anything?" Tilly shrugged. "She didn't leave a note or anything. The police think she maybe had some postpartum depression. That means sadness after you have a child. And she ran away and is living a completely new life somewhere else. They said she might try to make contact at some point, but that I shouldn't get my hopes up." "Do you think about your parents a lot?" "Kind of. It's funny because I can't remember them at all, so it's hard to miss them or feel sad about them in a very specific way. It's like feeling sad that you never had a diamond ring or a unicorn. I feel sad about the idea of them and knowing that they're not here, and I hate that I don't understand why Mom left, but I don't really have any memories of them as real people. I have this, though." Tilly pulled out her necklace from her jumper and showed Oscar. The small gold bee was no bigger than the nail on Tilly's thumb. "Was that your mom's?" Oscar asked. "No, it's mine, but she had one just the same." Here was a present from my dad. Hers was a present from my dad, and when I was born, she had one made for me, too. Tilly tucked it back into her jumper. The shop phone suddenly started ringing and made them both jump. Anyway, I've never really told anyone else about all of that, Tilly said a little awkwardly. I'm glad, Oscar started, but Tilly cut him off. Let's find a book for English. I need a new one, too. Oscar nodded and followed her up the stairs to the children's floor. Tilly picked out a pile of books for Oscar that she knew were printed on a different kind of paper that made it easier for people with dyslexia to read, and placed them in front of him with a flourish. While Oscar flicked through them, she went to find A Little Princess and realized the shop stocked several different editions. She looked through some of the different covers, wishing she'd had the chance to talk to her mom about the book. She was sliding the various editions back onto the shelf when, after careful consideration, Oscar settled on a slim book with a black cover and a creepy illustration on the front. They took it downstairs where Granddad put it in a canvas tote bag stamped with the Pages and Company logo and refused to let Oscar pay for it. It's a pleasure to have you in Pages and Company, Granddad said. Special offer for friends for the shop. Oscar thanked Granddad and gave Tilly an awkward half-wave before making his way back across to the road to Crumb's. Tilly headed upstairs to her reading nook, but when she turned the corner, she saw that her sofa was already occupied by a girl with red pigtails. She looked up at Tilly as she approached and sighed dramatically. I know what you must be thinking, she said in an accent that Tilly couldn't place. You are thinking what a dreadful burden it must be for a girl who is already so skinny to be forced to endure red hair as well. I wasn't thinking that at all, Tilly said. I was just wondering what you were doing on my sofa. I'm so awfully sorry, the girl said, jumping up and haphazardly straightening the cushions. I didn't know it was yours. I mean, it's not really, Tilly said, realizing that she must have seemed rude. It's just where I like to sit and read. And you surprised me. I hadn't noticed you when I was up here with a boy from school. Oh, I know that feeling, the girl said, smiling broadly. I have a tree that is laden with the most beautiful, sweet-smelling pale pink blossoms that I like to read under. The girl's face suddenly morphed into a look of horror. But can you ever forgive me? Forgive you for what? Tilly said, thoroughly flummoxed at the change in tone. My horrible manners. I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Anne, with an E. With an E? Tilly repeated hazily, excuse me. Yes, the E is ever so important. People are always telling me that the name is much the same with or without the E, but I think these people are severely lacking in imagination. How could you ever think that Anne without an E was the same as Anne with an E? It's like saying that dessert is the same as desert. But there I go again with my terrible manners. I haven't even asked what your name is. Oh, wait, let me guess. You look like an Emmeline? Maybe a Penelope? Cordelia? She added, sounding hopeful. It's just Tilly, I'm afraid. Short for Matilda. Matilda Pages. Why, that is a lovely name, and I am quite envious, Anne said, looking entirely delighted. I'm so thrilled to meet you. Are you looking for a book? Tilly asked. That sounds wonderful, thank you, Anne said. Autumn is the most magical time of the year for reading, don't you think? She gestured toward the window, which framed only drizzle and gray skies, but Anne reacted as though she could see auburn leaves tumbling into the wind. October is my absolute favorite month, and to read outside with the sun dappling. Do you think dappling is a real word, Tilly? I think it might be, don't you? With the sun dappling the leaves of a tree, a glass of raspberry cordial at hand, she trailed off, staring dreamily into nothing. Tilly began to find the silence a little awkward, but struggled to think of something to say, and so returned to her fail-safe question. What's your favorite story? She asked, jerking Anne out of her autumnal daydreams. Do stories you've made up yourself count? Asked Anne. I don't think so, said Tilly. I think they have to be, well, proper stories, like in a book. A story you've made up yourself is just as proper, don't you think? Although I suppose it is harder to share with other people unless it's written down. But I do love telling stories out loud as well. My friend Diana and I have a club where we read each other our stories and offer helpful advice on how to improve as writers. I must say, though, the advice is mainly one way. Poor Diana. She doesn't have much of an imagination, although I love her fiercely regardless. I dare say it is good for my soul to be bosom friends with a girl who is so lacking in imaginative powers. The mention of a friend named Diana made Tilly's brain itch. Something about this girl was so familiar. But anyway, it must depend on what the purpose of your story is, I suppose, Anne concluded and looked up triumphantly. Tilly nodded supportively, although she wasn't really very sure what Anne's point was. Do you know? Tilly started, glancing down at the book in her hand. You do remind me of... But she was interrupted by a harried-looking man who came up behind them and tapped Tilly on the shoulder imperiously. Excuse me, young lady, I need to pay for this immediately. Do you work here? He was holding a very thick business textbook. Not really, Tilly said, trying not to laugh as Anne impersonated the man's cross face behind his back. But I'll go find my granddad. He owns the shop. The man nodded curtly. I'll be right back, Tilly said to Anne. I don't trust you to come straight back, Missy. I'll come with you. I have an incredibly important meeting to get to urgently, the man said, and Tilly couldn't be bothered to explain that she wasn't talking to him. She delivered him to Granddad, who took him to the till, but when Tilly went back upstairs, she couldn't see Anne anywhere. She ran down to find Granddad after the grumpy customer had gone. Ah, Tilly, just the person I was looking for. Don't forget, we need some of your inspiration for the Wonderland party later. I'd been wondering if we could possibly try to... He paused, noticing how distracted she was. What's up, sweetheart? Did you see a girl come past here a few moments ago, she asked. No, afraid not, love. Was she a friend from school? No, just a customer, I think. She seemed nice, though. I thought she might have stuck around for a bit, Tilly said. But I can't find her. She probably had to go and meet her parents, Tills, Granddad said gently. Maybe she'll pop back in later. I'll keep an eye out for her if she comes in. What did she look like? She had red hair and 2 plaits, Tilly said. It was funny, actually. She reminded me of Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables. And her name was even Anne, too. Such a weird coincidence. Maybe it's like owners and their dogs, she joked. You start seeing your favorite characters in real people. Although that's not quite right with the dog thing, is it? She tailed off, noticing Granddad's face had gone pale. Are you okay? Should I get Granddad? Grandma, excuse me, do you need a cup of tea? No, I'm fine, love, Granddad reassured her. Just a wobbly moment. Been on my feet too long this morning, I think. I will take you up on that tea, though, and I'll just have a sit-down behind here for a moment. I'll be as right as rain before you know it. The color was already returning to his cheeks as Tilly left to make the tea. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Do you think that the girl in the bookshop was really Anne of Green Gables? We hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll be back to see you for Chapter 5 tomorrow, which is called Magic, Mischief, Nonsense.